Now, for more reaction on the story, I'm joined by Professor Alex van den Heever, a governance specialist from Wits University's School of Governance. Prof, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We appreciate your time. So in your view, what systemic issues do you believe within the SAPS may have contributed to such widespread corruption and possible shielding of criminal syndicates?
One of the causes, and this was also identified within the Zondo Commission, but is clearly evident in lots of government departments and state-owned enterprises, is where the corruption may stem from political appointments into the services themselves, so into the administrations. And this means that your sort of governance structures, your accountability structures no longer operate, because essentially you've got a network of people who can collude and from the top. And the difficulty here is that the police services are so important to dealing with systemic crime. So it's not only general crime, but it is also the cases of criminal activity by senior government officials and corruption, that you cannot have the police system become supine. And what is suggested by this particular case is that is in fact what has happened, and it's obviously what many people have suspected for quite a long time, because the absence of proper criminal investigations of senior officials, senior politicians in government is highly suspicious, given the prevalence of corruption and non-compliance with procurement procedures within government. It's just impossible to believe that so many ministers involved are not accountable. And part of the problem is no police investigations that conclude against anybody who's politically connected. And this appears to tell the story why.
So, Prof, do you then think there's a need to have a complete overhaul of the current leadership or even just the command structure of SAPS?
I think so. So there's a question here as to whether or not we're just looking at rotten apples versus, a few bad apples in the system. The problem is that this appears to be systemic, which means it's not only about cleaning out the people who there, if they're only replaced by other rotten apples, because the way in which the system is structured is that this is very important to protecting politically connected people from accountability. So the question is whether, even if they're replaced at the moment, are they going to be replaced with people who are actually going to do their job? So there's a problem with the appointment process of senior people at commissioner level within the police service, as well as the ministers themselves and the exercise of their powers. And it appears as though what this case indicates is that people who are criminals are basically working together with the top end of the police structure and for immunity. So yes, they need to be replaced, they need to be put to the side, and we need a proper, transparent, independent structure leading the police force. Now, the question is, can that be implemented in this period? But I don't know what the president is going to announce tomorrow, but it better be something along these lines. And what it shouldn't be is another commission of inquiry that's going to last a year and a half, and then where all the recommendations will be ignored. And the problem, if we had to look at the Life Esidimeni inquiry, you had two people who were potentially, at least one politically connected and the other very culpable, identified as requiring prosecution, and none has proceeded. And nobody involved in that taken forward. Zondo Commission the same,
right?
Et cetera, et cetera. So the problem here is that people allow a commission of inquiry to run for a long period of time and say, no, we don't investigate because the commission of inquiry is investigating. And then at the end of that, they hope that everybody's cooled off and forgotten, and they just leave it.
I mean, Prof, you speak about the problem being with the appointments, and you also talk about the process of transparency that needs to take place. And given that the allegations within this particular case involves politicians and other state actors, what reforms do you think we would need to insulate police investigations from that political interference?
Well, we can't allow so for instance, in this particular case, and in many cases before, right up to the Scorpions, very successful task forces, specialized task forces are just shut down overnight. And that is how you deal with structural crime and coordinated crime in society, sort of the highly networked crime, where people are very organized, and therefore you require sophisticated investigations, and you require investigative teams who themselves are insulated. So you've got to have those protected. Now, the problem is that we allow a gap at the top, in that we allow interference at the top, who can interfere with task forces and undermine their independence. So there needs to be a very close look at exactly how all of this is structured, because we can't allow politicians to coordinate to protect themselves from the abuse of state resources, which
Most
is exactly
certainly.
what's happening.
All right.
And so we need a new structure. This one's not working, and it needs to be an interim structure in place for now, and we need basically government to act. But this can't continue. It is too important.
Most certainly. Prof, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. We certainly are looking forward to the President's address tomorrow evening that would possibly address a lot of these issues and help us move forward in ensuring that this systemic corruption is eroded. Thank you for joining us. That was Professor Alex van den Heever.